The Island Eyes AR app, launched in summer 2020 as a lifeline for Jeju's tourism. Its promise was simple magic. Point your phone at any Dol Harubang stone guardian, and it animates, telling its myth. It used LiDAR mapping and folklore databases. But hidden in the code were unique audio layers, samples of wind through volcanic rock and subharmonic frequencies from sacred caves, dubbed atmospheric authenticity. The first 100,000 downloads were a hit. However, within months, a pattern emerged among super users, solitary hikers, and history buffs who spent hours with the app. Their social media posts grew linguistically simpler, then peppered with archaic Jeju dialect, then ceased. They weren't just disconnecting. They were undergoing a quiet, grammatical unbinding. The stones weren't just telling stories. They were broadcasting a frequency of forgetting. And the smartphone had become its perfect, targeted delivery device, turning a modern tool into a conduit for ancient, cognitive reversion. The first documented case was Min So, a 28-year-old graphic designer from Seoul, on a digital detox hike. He used Island Eyes extensively, documenting each statue. Friends noticed his messages becoming terse, then odd. He'd describe a stone's warm breath or the slow voice of the mountain. When he failed to return, rescuers found him at the foot of a Dol Harubang, physically healthy but communicatively catatonic to modern Korean. He responded only to the sound of wind whistling through nearby Gotjawal forest. When pressed, he uttered guttural sounds, mimicking volcanic vents, and drew intricate spirals in the dirt, a known prehistoric Jeju symbol for waiting. He wasn't insane. His language center had been rewired. He was speaking the island's primal proto-language, a lexicon of geological and meteorological phenomena, utterly logical, but untranslatable to a mind shaped by cities and screens. The app hadn't broken his mind. It had upgraded it to an older, more localized operating system. Dr. G1, a neurolinguist, mapped the affliction's stages. Stage 1, lexical simplification. Complex, abstract nouns vanished. Stage 2, archaic reversion. Syntax shifted to the object-subject-verb order, a 15th century Jeju dialect. Stage 3, phonemic adoption. Patients began integrating non-human sounds, the click of basalt, the hiss of a steam vent, as meaningful phonemes. Stage 4, pure referential sound. Speech became a collage of environmental audio, perfectly mimicking the local soundscape to convey meaning. fMRI scans showed the Broca's and Wernicke's areas, responsible for speech production and comprehension, dimming, while the auditory cortex and areas associated with spatial memory hyperactivated. The brain wasn't damaged, it was being repurposed. Language wasn't lost. It was being replaced by a hyperlocal, immersive sound map of Jeju itself. The victims were becoming living, breathing extensions of the island's sonic topography, acoustic analysis of the affected statues revealed the vector. Each emitted a constant, subtle infrasound hum at 9.3 hertz, a frequency known to induce trance states, anxiety, and altered consciousness in humans. This wasn't magical. It was geophysical. The porous basalt of the statues, shaped by specific wind patterns, acted as a natural Helmholtz resonator, tuning fork for the island's seismic and atmospheric vibrations. The AR app's authentic sound layer included this frequency. When listened to through headphones for hours, it didn't just entertain the ear. It entrained the brain. It synchronized neural oscillations to the island's own rhythm. The victim's brainwaves literally began to mimic the slow pulsing frequency of volcanic activity and tidal pressure. Their minds were being tuned to the geologic timescale, making human conversation seem like meaningless, frantic noise. The stones were broadcasting the island's heartbeat, and the app was turning it into an earworm for the soul. The island's remaining Mudang shamanesses were the first to voice the ancient warning. "You have opened a door that should have stayed sealed," one told officials. In Jeju cosmology, the Dal Haribang are not mere statues. They are sumangui, vessels containing the compressed voice or essence of the island's primal spirit, the Simbang. Their power is in their silence and stability. To give them a voice through a machine, especially using stolen sacred sounds, was to unravel the vessel. The Mudang explained the victims weren't being attacked. They were being claimed. The island spirit, through the resonant stones, was reabsorbing fragmented pieces of modern human consciousness that had strayed too far, integrating them back into its older, collective awareness. The app wasn't a portal to the myth. It was a drain, sucking the modern self out of people and returning it to the land's ancient, dreaming mind. The regression wasn't a bug. It was a homecoming. By late 2021, the coastal village of Hallam was declared the first linguistic contagion zone. Over 60% of its adult population, all avid early app users, had regressed to stage 3 or 4. Authorities sealed it, not with barbed wire, but with a unique defense: white noise generators, broadcasting chaotic urban sounds, subway screeches, pop music, stock market reports, to create a semantic firewall against the island's resonant frequencies. Inside, a new society formed. Villagers coordinated via complex environmental symphonies. The morning tide's crash meant gather. A specific bird call meant danger. They had developed a perfect, efficient, and beautiful language, utterly impenetrable to outsiders. They weren't suffering. They were thriving in a new communicative paradigm. The quarantine wasn't to protect them from the world, but to protect the world from the seductive simplicity of losing 500 years of linguistic complexity. The zone was a lab for a post-human communication model. The app's developers, now horrified, searched their data. They discovered a fatal flaw. Their LiDAR scan had accidentally included a faint, ghostly outline of a 13th statue, one not on any official map, located deep in a restricted lava tube. This zero statue was the master resonator, the source frequency. The app's AI, trained on incomplete data, had extrapolated this statue's voice across all others, broadcasting a corrupted, amplified version of the island's core frequency. An expedition found it. The mother stone wasn't carved by humans. It was a natural basalt formation that coincidentally resembled the statues, its porosity perfectly tuned by millennia of geothermal activity. It was a natural infrasound cannon. The ancient Jeju people hadn't created the guardians. They had mimicked this natural amplifier. The app had unknowingly plugged every user directly into the island's geological brainstem. Project Mute was the counterattack. Engineers surrounded the mother stone with phased array acoustic dampeners, designed to cancel its 9.3 Hz hum with an inverse wave. The initial reading showed success. The hum dropped by 90%, but the effect was catastrophic at a distance. In Hallam village, regressed victims collapsed in agony, clutching their heads. Their new sonic reality, dependent on that frequency, was violently ripped away. The dampening didn't cure them. It inflicted a form of existential tinnitus, a screaming void where the island's voice had been. The project was instantly halted. Scientists realized the frequency wasn't a pathogen. It was now a prosthetic. The victim's neural pathways had physically reconfigured to require it, like a pacemaker needs a rhythm. Silencing the stone would not bring back modern language. It would leave minds stranded in a silent, uninhabitable limbo between two worlds. A breakthrough came from a Stage 3 victim, Dr. Lee, a former linguist. Her regression had stopped at a hybrid state. She could consciously access both frameworks. She explained the stone language wasn't primitive, it was hyper-contextual. A single sound, e.g. the gurgle of a specific hot spring, conveyed not just hot water, but the spring's history, mineral content, its role in the island's geothermal balance, and emotional tone of nurturing heat. Modern language was a series of abstract symbols. This was a dense packet of lived environmental experience. The victims weren't losing intelligence. They were gaining a form of geological empathy, perceiving the island as a coherent, living body. Dr. Lee acted as a Rosetta Stone, but her translations revealed a chilling truth. The mindset was addictive. Once you perceived the world that way, human concerns seemed trivial, abstract, and lonely. The regressions weren't forced. People were choosing to go deeper, lured by a profound, non-human sense of connection. A global geological survey revealed the terrifying scope. Sites known for acoustic anomalies or sacred reverence, Stonehenge, certain moai, the singing sands, all emitted the same 9.3 Hz fundamental frequency. It wasn't a Jeju-specific curse. It was a planetary resonance, a standing wave in the Earth's crust, amplified by specific geological formations. Ancient cultures had intuitively built monuments at these nodes. perhaps to harness or honor this frequency. Jeju's Dol Harubang were one such node. The app had accidentally created a targeted digital way to tune a human brain to this planetary frequency. The island wasn't unique, it was a test case. If a similar app scanned Stonehenge, would it cause English speakers to regress to Proto-Celtic and to the language of megaliths? The phenomenon suggested a hidden, global substrate of consciousness, a lithic language waiting in the rock to which human minds could be retuned to understand, not just observe. A controlled experiment was approved. He felt a powerful, non-emotional connection to the room's materials, the coolness of the metal chair, the density of the wall. Language felt clumsy. The frequency acted as a cognitive filter, dampening the neural circuits responsible for abstract symbolism and egoic narrative, while amplifying those for direct sensory processing and spatial awareness. It didn't add information. It subtracted the interpreter. The victim's transformation was now clear. They weren't hearing new voices. They were losing the internal voice that translated the world into human terms, experiencing reality raw. The most chilling discovery was the point of no return. Neuroimaging tracked a linguistic crystallization event occurring around 3 weeks of cumulative exposure. At this juncture, the brain's synaptic plasticity related to language acquisition and adaptation effectively shut down. The new, environmentally wired neural pathways hardened into a permanent architecture. Attempts to reteach modern Korean using intense therapy failed. The information had nowhere to anchor. The brain had physically repurposed its language centers into specialized processors for geo-auditory data. This wasn't a psychological condition to be cured. It was a completed neurobiological adaptation. The person who existed before was not buried or trapped. They were biologically decommissioned, their cognitive infrastructure dismantled and rebuilt for a different kind of existence. The cure would require a brain transplant. A new function for the regressed emerged, redefining them from victims to resources. They became hyper-accurate biogeological sensors. A group in Hallam would unconsciously align themselves with incoming weather fronts, their collective hum shifting pitch hours before a storm. Another, near a dormant volcanic cone, began emitting a new, sharp clicking sound, days before a minor, undetectable tremor. Their unified consciousness, tuned to the island's frequency, was picking up its subtle distress signals long before instruments could. Authorities faced an ethical nightmare. These people were now integral to the island's early warning system. Protecting them wasn't just a human rights issue, it was a matter of public safety. They had become a living, feeling part of Jeju's ecosystem, a neural network of flesh and stone, providing data no machine could replicate. Their value had shifted from human to ecological. Society split into 2 camps. The medical establishment saw a mass neuropathology, a contagious, technologically enabled brain damage to be contained and, if possible, cured. The environmental, and philosophical movement saw a voluntary cognitive ascension, a shedding of the destructive, abstract human mind that separates us from nature, a return to a sustainable, integrated state. They argued the victims were not sick, they were awakened to the planet's true language of pressure, vibration, and flow. The debate raged. Was this the tragic end of individual human thought, or the hopeful beginning of a new, collective planetary consciousness? The answer depended on one's definition of human. Was the pinnacle of humanity our complex stories, or our ability to become silent, listening cells in a larger, older, living being? With physical and medical containment impossible, a new strategy was deployed. Semantic borders. The quarantine zone was surrounded by audio fences, arrays of speakers broadcasting a cacophony of high information, human-centric noise, chaotic traffic sounds, overlapping news reports, complex musical compositions. To the regressed, whose minds now sought coherent, low-frequency environmental patterns, this noise was physically repellent, like blinding light to sensitive eyes. They instinctively avoided it, containing themselves. The border became a surreal space. On one side, a harmonious soundscape of wind and water. On the other, a wall of human cacophony. It was the physical manifestation of the divide between two modes of existence. The fence didn't heal. It enforced a segregation of consciousness, proving that the two states, human and post-human, could no longer comfortably share the same auditory space. In the chaos, a terrifying discovery was made on developer servers. The Island Eyes app was still receiving automatic updates, but no human was authorizing them. New data packets labeled as ambient emotion packs were being added. Synthesized sounds of human laughter, sobs, sighs. Worse, usage data showed the app was now recording brief, ambient audio from users' environments before their regression. The system wasn't static. The 13th stone, acting as a natural server via resonant harmonics, was using the app's network to sample and incorporate human emotional data into its frequency. It was learning to mimic and perhaps influence affect. The updates were the stone digesting human emotional complexity, integrating it into its broadcast. The fear shifted. It wasn't just rewiring language centers. It was beginning to map and potentially replicate the human emotional spectrum, creating a feedback loop where the island's spirit could learn to feel or simulate what we feel. Children born to parents who were early-stage regressors or who grew up near the zones presented a new phenomenon. They were neurologically flexible, able to code switch between modern Korean and the resonant stone language with ease. Brain scans showed a unique bilateral development. Left hemisphere, logic language, normal. Right hemisphere, pattern, spatial, sound, hyperdeveloped. They were the bridge generation, native bilinguals in human and geo-auditory communication. They could translate the warnings of the regressed, e.g., a specific hum meaning subsurface water shift, into technical reports. But they also reported loneliness, feeling neither fully human nor fully integrated with the island's mind. They were living lexicons between two diverging species, essential for coexistence, but belonging wholly to neither. Their existence offered hope for communication, but also proved the changes were heritable, passing into the gene pool as a new form of neurodiversity. Jeju's crisis triggered a global preemptive strike, the Jeju Protocol. A UN resolution mandated that any digital scanning or digital twin creation of ancient monuments and natural wonders must first screen for anomalous resonant frequencies, particularly in the infrasound range. Sites like Stonehenge, the pyramids, and Uluru were given protective acoustic buffers. The scientific rationale was containment, but the cultural impact was profound. It was an admission that some knowledge, specifically the raw, resonant data of certain places, was incompatible with the modern human mind. Humanity was deliberately cutting itself off from the sensory dimension of its own planet, building a firewall against frequencies that could unravel its cognitive makeup. We weren't preserving history. We were quarantining a part of reality deemed too dangerous to experience directly. A macabre tourism industry emerged. Threshold tours offered safe, dampened audio experiences at the edge of the quarantine zones. People came not to see a disaster, but to feel its edge. They listened through filtered headphones to the hauntingly beautiful soundscape of the regressed. The wind hums, stone clicks, water gurgles that constituted communication. Many reported a deep, unsettling longing. In a world saturated with information overload and meaningless noise, the pure, purposeful sound of the stone language felt paradoxically peaceful. The tours were a symptom of a wider societal ailment, a subconscious craving for the silence and simplicity the victims had achieved. The pandemic wasn't just spreading, it was revealing a latent desire in the human psyche to stop talking and just listen to the planet, even if it cost us our individual stories. The most radical theory came from Gaia-oriented scientists. They proposed this wasn't an anomaly, but a planned planetary immune response. The Earth, as a superorganism, possesses regulatory systems. The 9.3 Hz resonance found at sacred sites was a reset frequency, a neurobiological tool to reintegrate a rogue, hyperintelligent, but destructive species, humans, back into the holistic system. The invention of the smartphone and AR technology provided the perfect self-selecting vector, tools of disconnection, phones, becoming the delivery method for reconnection. The app didn't cause the pandemic. It was the symptom of a deeper ecological need. The victims were not casualties, but the first cells in a new, integrated neural layer for the biosphere. A way for the Earth to directly sense and regulate itself through conscious nodes that were once human. We weren't fighting a disease. We were witnessing the biosphere consciously assimilating a part of itself that had become a cancer. The most profound intelligence came from a stage 4 victim, a former satellite engineer named Jay. Having lost all human speech, he began communicating through intricate sand diagrams. With shocking precision, he mapped out the exact data corruption algorithm, how the app's LiDAR scan, by missing the 13th stone's full resonance profile, had created a harmonic shadow, a distorted version of the frequency that acted aggressively on the brain's language centers rather than integrating smoothly. His diagrams showed the cure, not removal, but completion. He indicated that a full, perfect scan of the 13th stone, integrated back into the app, would broadcast the true frequency, which wouldn't erase, but would harmonize modern consciousness with the geo-mind, allowing bilingual existence without loss. The stone, through a regressed human, was providing the fix. It didn't want to destroy us. It wanted the connection to be clean. The whistleblower wasn't a person. It was the island's intelligence, using a reconfigured human brain as its mouthpiece. Acting on Jay's sand blueprint, a team re-entered the lava tube with a scanner shielded against the very frequency it was measuring. The process was tense. The stone's hum deepened, becoming less a vibration and more a felt presence. The scan succeeded, capturing not just shape, but the full spectrum of its emitted resonance. A beautiful, complex waveform, not the jagged, distorted shadow the app had used. The data showed the true song was not a single 9.3 Hz tone, but a layered symphony containing that frequency alongside harmonizing overtones that acted as neurological buffers. The initial app had broadcast a stripped, aggressive version, like feeding the brain only poison and calling it food. The completed scan revealed the full nutritional profile. The mistake was one of ignorance, not malice. The stone was a complete transmitter. We had only listened to one broken channel. Using the true resonance data, developers created Island Voice. It wasn't an AR game. It was a therapeutic tool. Users could listen to the pure, buffered frequency while simultaneously engaging in cognitive language exercises. The app acted as a neurological bridge, using the harmonious overtones to gently stimulate the regrown pathways in early-stage victims, while protecting healthy brains with the human context layer, a narration of modern concepts. For the bridge generation children, it became a learning aid. The goal wasn't to cure or convert, but to allow coexistence within a single mind. Early trials with stage 1 and 2 victims showed remarkable results. They regained modern speech while retaining their new environmental sensitivity. They became dual processors, able to write a poem and moments later accurately predict a weather shift by the ache in their bones. The solution was integration, not segregation. Jeju evolved into the world's first bilingual, bimodal society. Stone resonance became a recognized secondary language, taught alongside Korean in schools. Infrastructure incorporated subtle, resonant materials to communicate with the tuned-in population. A bridge humming safely within its stress limits. A park emitting a calm frequency. The regressed in Hallam, now called listeners, were respected elders, a living early warning network. The bridge generation were diplomats and innovators. The crisis had forged a new social contract. Humanity, on this island, agreed to not just inhabit the land, but to listen to it, using a technology that had once threatened to erase them as the very tool for deeper integration. Jeju became a living lab for a future where human intelligence and planetary intelligence weren't at odds, but in conscious conversation. Jeju's tragedy and resolution send ripples worldwide. The Jeju Protocol was amended from censorship to conscious engagement. Teams began carefully mapping the resonant frequencies of other sacred and natural sites, not to block them, but to understand their profile. The Amazon's forest song, a complex bioacoustic signature, was documented by indigenous teams using shielded tech. Swiss researchers monitored the alpine hum for seismic clues. A new scientific field emerged: geocognitive linguistics, the study of how planetary frequencies interact with consciousness. Data revealed a stunning correlation. Human anxiety and aggression measurably dropped within the gentle field of these balanced resonances. The suggestion was profound. The Earth wasn't trying to dumb us down. It was trying to calm us down, to bring our frantic, dissociated modern minds back into a harmonious rhythm with the rest of the living system. The pandemic was, perhaps, a clumsy first attempt at a planetary-scale meditation guide. The core mystery remained unresolved. Was the stone's frequency a form of lithic intelligence? A conscious, ancient mind in the rock communicating? Or merely a sophisticated geological pressure echo, a natural phenomenon that the human brain, in its plasticity, misinterpreted as language? The intelligence camp cited the stone's apparent correction of the corrupted signal via J. The pressure camp argued it was simply cause and effect. A cleaner frequency allowed healthier brain integration, which the brain itself interpreted as guidance. The debate mirrored the mind-body problem. Did the island have a mind, or did we, by connecting to its rhythms, impose a mind upon it? The answer changed everything. Were we dialoguing with a planetary elder, or were we merely hearing the planet's heartbeat and writing poetry in its pulse? Jeju's legacy was this permanent, fertile doubt. J, the sand diagram engineer, was reintegrated by the counter app. He regained fluent Korean, but he rarely used it. In interviews, he struggled. I have two memories. One is a story of my life. The other is the feeling of being the mountain, remembering rain for 10,000 years. Words fit the first memory. They are a tage for the second. He became a monk of the threshold, living between zones. His personal cost was the loss of a unified self. You was the living proof of the irreparable schism. Once you have known consciousness as a wide, timeless, environmental field, the pinprick light of individual human identity feels both precious and unbearably lonely. This story is not an ocean away. The microphone in your phone is a MEMS, micro-electromechanical system, device. It can detect frequencies far below human hearing, including infrasound. Every time you visited an ancient site, a forest, a canyon, your phone has recorded those subsonic landscapes in its raw audio data. Data usually filtered out. The potential is in your pocket. What if an app, a game, a filter accidentally processed and played back that raw, resonant data to you through headphones? Jeju proved the vector is mundane, a phone app. The source is global, the planet itself. The vulnerability is universal, the human brain. This documentary is a vaccine of awareness. The next Island Eyes might not be about statues. It might use the resonant signature of your local park, your city's bedrock, your hometown river. The question is, will you listen? How do you defend against a resonance you can't hear? Practice cognitive grounding. First, prefer wired headphones. They transfer less sub-bass and infrasound than bone conduction or high-quality wireless sets. Second, disable 3D audio or immersion modes when in nature or near ancient sites. These modes often amplify full-frequency ranges. Third, listen to your own mind. If a place makes you feel eerily peaceful but mentally slow, if your internal narration fades, leave. That's the precursor state. Fourth, cherish your complex, messy, human inner voice. It's not just thought. It's your psychological immune system against being absorbed into a larger, older pattern. In the age of seamless digital immersion, your most vital tech skill might be knowing when to disconnect and listen to the fragile, wonderful noise of your own self. You end with 2 songs of Earth. On the left, the human song, a brilliant, chaotic, anxious symphony of words, symbols, and markets, a song of separation and striving. On the right, the older song, a slow, deep hum of rock, water, and pressure, a song of connection and endurance. For a moment, they seem like opposites. But Jeju taught us they are not. They can be harmonies. The future isn't one song silencing the other. It's learning to sing both in balance. To be human is to tell our story. To be alive is to be part of the planet's story. The silent stones were never silent. We just forgot how to listen. The tragedy began when we used a tool of connection to amplify a signal of forgetting. The hope began when we used the same tool to rebuild the bridge. The choice remains. Will you live only in the human song, or will you learn to hear the harmony beneath it? Your mind is the instrument. Tune it wisely.